So let us move ahead to the next lab, that is lab number 4, models and strongly typed views. So till now we have talked about controllers. So we created a controller called as a home controller, and this home controller actually goes ahead and invokes the go to home.cshtml, that is our view. But when we talk about MVC, there are three things actually. One is a controller, the other one is a model, and then we have the view. So let us go ahead and add a model, and let us see this MVC architecture end to end. Okay. Now, what exactly is a model at the end of the day? Models are nothing but they are simple C# classes, or they are simple classes. They are classes which have business logic and which provides data to the MVC application. So for example, models can be like customer class, supplier class, orders class, right? So let me go ahead and add a model here. You can see, at the end of the day, when we talk about MVC architecture, when you add a controller, you add it to a controllers folder. When you added a view, you add it to a views folder. In the same way, when you are adding a model, you have to add it to the models folder. So let me go ahead. Let's add a new item here. And at the end of the day, model is nothing but it's a class. So you can see that I've selected the class template, and I will give the name as customer.cs. So this is going to be a simple customer class or a customer model which has customer code and customer name property. So you can see here this customer class here. So let me go and add two properties here. So I'm going to go and add customer code and customer name. So what I'll do is let me go and use the code snippet so that I don't have to type like public string set get, those kind of things, right? So what you can do is you can type your prop. So this prop is a code snippet, okay, which helps you to create C# properties or helps you to create class properties. Okay, so I'll say here prop tab once, again tab. So you can see that it comes out with a shell of code. So I'll say yes, this is a property by the name customer code. In the same way, let me go and add one more property here called as customer name. So you can see he has actually created a shell code for you, and by using the shell code you don't have to really type a lot of things. Okay, so I have a very simple customer class here with a customer code and a customer name property. So let me go and rebuild this solution. So I've clicked on rebuild and everything looks okay. So now what I'd like to do is I would like to go and load this customer class with some data. So I would like to go and create an object of this customer class, load it with some data and display it in a UI. So now because this is a very different functionality, we would like to go and add one more controller here called as the customer controller. Remember, at this moment we have this home controller here. You can see here in the solution explorer we have the home controller, right? So the home controller will do things like display about us, go to index pages, display contact us, etc., right? The customer controller would load the customer, would display the customer, would edit the customer, update, delete, and those kind of things. So let us go ahead and divide this project into separate modules so that it is more maintainable. So rather than going and coding the action inside the home controller, let me go ahead here and add one more controller here. So let us go ahead and add one more controller. Let us select the MVC5 empty controller. Why? Because we are learning MVC. Let us not use any kind of scaffolding templates. We will talk about the scaffolding templates later on, but at this moment we are learning MVC. So let us not have any kind of ready-made code. So I'll give the name as customer controller. Always remember, do not delete that word controller. So you can see that he has created the customer controller class here. So there it is. So what action we want to do now? Remember I said, right, we have controllers and controller has actions inside it. So a customer controller class would have actions like load customer, update customer, delete customer, and those kind of things, right? So let me go and create an action here called as load. Okay, so rather than index or load would look more reasonable name. So now the end user will come. He will hit this customer controller, he will invoke the load action, and the load action will go and fill the customer class or create the object of the customer class and fill it with some data, right? So in order to go and access this customer class, we need to go and reference this namespace here, hello world.modules, right? So the first thing what I have to do here is I have to go and reference this namespace hello world.modules. Remember, in case you are very much new to .NET, namespace is nothing but it is collection of classes, right? So if you want to go and access this customer class, you need to go and first import this namespace, right? So let us go to the customer controller here, and I'll say using hello world dot models, right? Good. So I'll go here, I'll create an object of the customer class, and I will load it with some dummy data. Okay. So I'm going to go and load it with some dummy data. So at this moment, we'll not go and call the database and do things. We will do it right away here. So I'll say, okay, let's load the customer code with 1001. Let's load the customer name with Shiv. Okay, so you can see here I have loaded. So this is a shortcut way of loading data inside an object, so rather than creating a customer object and then saying obj.customer code equal to 1001, obj.customer name is equal to Shiv, what you can do is you can just say new here, give a curly bracket, and automatically the property name pops up, and then you can just start setting the value here, right? So this is a shortcut way of assigning data to an object. Okay, right. So I've created a customer object here, and this customer object I would like to go and pass it to a view. So I would like to go and display this customer object inside a view. So you can see here what I've done is I've taken this customer object and passed it to the view. Now this object has to be displayed inside a view, right? So we have yet not created the view, but let us say we're going to go and create a view called as customer. So I'll give the view name here. So you can see here I'm saying, okay, display this customer object, in this view called as customer. Okay, we have yet not created it. We are going to create it. Now one of the way of creating a view is you go to the views folder, right click on it, say add a view, and then give the name. The other way is you can go right away from here and you can say add a view. But this time when we are going to go and add a view, this view will not be a view without a model, but this view will be a view with a model. So let us go ahead and select this empty here, right? And we'll say that this view is going to go and display this customer model or the customer object. Okay, I'll tell you what how this will help out. When you go and create a view in this way, right, it is called as a strongly typed view, right? So I'm going to go and name this view as customer, and I've selected that this model will be associated with this customer view. And remember that you shouldn't be selecting this empty without model, but it should be empty. Okay, and I will say add. So there you can see our view is created by the name customer.cshtml. You can see over here I have this customer.cshtml, right? Remember that this is a Razor view. Razor is nothing but it's a new view engine. It's a new kind of a view, which helps you to display pages, which helps you to create pages and display UI using ASP.NET or using MVC ASP.NET. Okay, so couple of things here before I move ahead. I want to stress couple of points, which I have been saying in the previous videos also. You can see here he has created customer.cshtml, but he has not created customer.cshtml.cs. So there is no behind code at this moment. Okay, so a couple of things I would like to stress here. First thing, there is no behind code. Second thing, if you go to the toolbox here, there are no server controls. You can see there is HTML tab, but you can see that there are no server controls, right? Third, because there is no behind code, there is no page lifecycle. And the last one, there is no view state. Remember, no page lifecycle, no view state, no server control, no code behind. Okay. At this moment, I have not spoken about why MVC, but these 4 points, which I am repeating again and again, will form the basis later on to make you understand why MVC. So let us move ahead for 1 or 2 more hours ahead, and then I will speak about why MVC. Okay, so don't worry on that. I know that there are lots of questions in the mind at this moment, that why we should use MVC, why the code behind is a problem, etc. But at this moment, let us try to complete some practicals, and then we will talk about why MVC. Okay, so I have created the view here. I would like to go and display customer name here. So I'll say, okay, I put a small text, customer name. All the razor syntaxes starts with a @ sign. So I'll say here @model dot customer name. I'll say, okay, let us have a BR tag, customer code @model dot customer code. Great. So let me go and build this, rebuild the solution, right? And now we would like to go and invoke this load method over here, right? So remember how to invoke it. You should first type the controller name followed by the action name, and you should be able to see your view. Okay, so let me do a control F5 here. So there you can see our browser is running. So how we should type, we should say slash, right, customer slash load, right? I have already said about this in the previous classes, and let's say enter. And there it is. You can see my view is now displayed. So it first went ahead, it hit this load method here. The load method actually filled the customer object with some data like 1001 and Shiv, and this object was then passed to the view, and on the view, we had displayed this customer code and customer name with the BR tag, and there it is, what you can see, right? So good. So we have come to a point, where we are seeing the full MVC architecture in a end-to-end way, right? So we have the model, we have the view, we have the controller, right? Now, at this moment, if you see this customer object, which is loaded on the screen here, is hard-coded. Hard-coded means it is actually typed inside the C# code. So I would like to go one step ahead. I would like to go and create a screen where the end user would go and type the customer name, the customer code. He would press on a submit button, and then a customer object would be created and it would be displayed on this page here, right? So let us go ahead and create a simple data entry screen where the end user will go and type the name and the code. When he presses submit, this page will be again invoked. So in the same customer controller, let us go ahead and create one more action here called as enter customer. Okay, so let me go here and create an action result, and I'll say enter. Okay, so load, enter, edit, add, so these are all actions, right? So I'll say here return view. Okay, right. So you can see that I have created one more action here called as enter. So we have load, we have enter, right? So let us right click on this enter and let us add a view here, and this view I will name it as enter customer.aspx, enter customer.cshtml. I'm sorry, not aspx, cshtml. At this moment, we'll not go and create a strongly typed view. I'm going to go and just say empty without a model. So add. So you can see that there we have this enter customer.chhtml. Also, just one more point, you can see here that if the end user says customer/enter, there is no enter.chhtml, right? It has enter customer. So let us go and type the view name here, that the view name is different from the action name. So we'll say here enter customer, right? Right. So load customer to load the customer data, and enter customer, this screen will help us to go, enter customer name and customer code through a text box, and then whatever customer name and customer code is entered over here will be displayed onto this view here, right? So as we have said previously that we do not have any kind of server controls for creating text boxes, buttons, etc. We have to actually use HTML, right? So let us go here. Let us start with a form. So I'll just make the fonts bigger so that you can see it, right? So we'll say here form /form, right? Let me go to the toolbox here. Rather than typing all the HTML, let us take help of the toolbox. So we need one text box, where the customer will enter the name, right? So I'll say customer name and I'll put this text box there, right? So you can see there's a text box there. We need one button. So one text box, Control C, just put a BR tag here, Control V. So customer name, customer code. So one text box for the code, BR tag, and one submit button. Remember, there is a submit here and there is a button, but we want a submit button. Okay, so this is not a HTML class at this moment, but ensure that you put a button and not a submit button. So the end user comes to the screen, he types on the first text box the name, the second text box the code, and he hits the submit button. So when he hits the submit button, we have to post this form to the customer controller. When I say post, means we have to actually send all this complete form with the text box data to the customer controller, right? So let us go to the customer controller, and on this customer controller I will create a action here, because remember, at the end of the day, you either click a submit button, you either type the URL, you either click a hyperlink. The first hit will always come to the controller, and from there onwards he will create a model object, he will invoke the views and etc. So let me go and create a action result here. So let me create an action result here saying submit. So this submit will be called, right? This submit action will be called, and he in turn will call the customer.cshtml. So whatever data comes inside this submit, he will actually call the customer view. Okay, we'll see about this object later on. So you can see here, the user comes to this screen, he presses the submit button, and once he presses the submit button, he will actually first come and hit this submit action over here. So what I'll do here is, in the form action, I will say please call submit, right? And the method is equal to post. Why post? Because we want to send the data. Remember, there are two important methods in HTTP. One is the get. Get means when you want to get an object from the server, and post means when you want to send data. So at this moment I have text boxes, so I want to actually send data, so I'll say method is equal to post. Great. Now in order to access these text box data on the server side, we have to name these text boxes, right? Now there are two ways by which you can name the text boxes. One is, you can say like this, name equal to customer name, right? And the other one is you can use ID. So now what should we use? Should we use name or should we use ID? Remember, ID is used when any client-side programming language wants to access the value. So for example, if you have JavaScript running, right, on the client side, and if JavaScript wants to go and access these text boxes, they can use the ID value here. In other words, this text one can be used by JavaScript language. But at this moment, we want to access these values on the server side, that means on the controller, right? So we need to use name. So remember, name is for the server side and ID is for the client side. So for example, if you have CSS or JavaScript, if they want to access these values, they can always use the ID. But if ASP.NET or any other server side language, they want to access these text box values, they have to use the name. So at this moment we are more concerned with the server side, so let us keep the name as customer name, and this one I will say name is equal to customer code. So name is equal to customer code. Good. So you can see here I have named my text box as well. So when the user hits the submit button, it will actually go and post to this action called as submit, which is over here. And over here I will go and create a customer object. So I'll say here customer object is equal to new customer object, right? Obj dot, so customer code request dot form, right? So what is the name over there? The name what we have given there, so For customer code, it was customer code. For customer name, it was customer name, and we pass this object to the view. Great. So let me just go and build this solution here. Build. Everything okay. So let us go ahead and run this application. So again, in order to run the application, the first thing is, in order to pop up the customer screen, we have to say customer/enter. So that will actually give us enter customer.cshtml. Once we fill the data and we do a submit, after submit, it will actually come over here and display us the customer.cshtml, right? So I'll do a control F5 here. So there my browser is running. So I'll say here customer/enter, right? So once I press enter, customer, so sorry for this, customer, remember customer without the word controller, and then enter, right? So there my screen is. So I'll say here Shiv, and I'll say 1001, that is my code. So submit, you can see it's getting displayed. 1002 Raju, right? So if I click on submit, again I can see the data getting displayed, right? Great. So now this view is displaying dynamic data from an input screen. Now you can always go and improve your code here, by just specifying in the submit like this customer, okay, and it will work automatically. In other words, this object will get filled automatically. Why? Because at this moment the name of the text boxes are very much similar to the property name. So you can see here, for example, this is my customer class here. The name of the customer code is customer code like this, right? And the same thing has been entered here as well. You can see this name, customer name here, and it is the same property name here. So because exactly the name of the text boxes are equal to the property names of the customer class, this object will automatically populate. Okay, so if I go and run this program in a debug mode very quickly, so if I go and do a F5 here, you can see I put a debug point here. So there my screen is running. So I'll just say Shiv, and I'll say 1001, and if I say submit, right, it will come and hit this debug point here. So you can see that it has hit this debug point, and if you see this customer object, you can see that it has automatically filled. So in case your name of the text box and the property names of the model class, if they are same, then you can just go and put the object here, and automatically the request.form is done by the MVC framework itself. Okay. But now the next question is, what if the names are not same? Because normally what will happen is that you will have two teams, right? One is a designer team and the other one is a programming team. So the programmer team would actually code the controller and the models, and the designer team, who actually works with HTML and Dreamweaver and front page, right? They will actually go and work on this HTML. So when they are working on HTML, it is very much possible that they can go and put some different name here. For example, they can put a name here like TXT customer name, right? So what if we have a scenario where the name of the text boxes are different from the property names of the model classes? So that is achieved by using something called as model binders, MVC model binders. So in the next lab, that is lab 5, we will talk about model binders. So again, this was worth spending 20 minutes, and in this 20 minutes we talked about models, and we also talked about something called as strongly typed views, and we saw that how we can pass data from the view to the controller, right? So we have completed 1 hour and 20 minutes of a training, and we have more 14 hours and 40 minutes still pending, right? So I'm sure that those 14 hours and 40 minutes will just pass by. So keep coding, keep looking at these video series, and we'll ensure that you become an MVC professional. Don't give up. I know, again, I repeat this in every last video. It is very boring. it's possible that you can get stuck with a lot of issues. Please ensure that, in case you have issues, please send us a mail at questpond@questpond.com. We also have our landline number. We also have our Skype ID. And also, if you wish, you can contact us for the offline training, which we are conducting in every city. So we have already started from Mumbai. So it's a 2-day program again, the same how this video series is. So it's a 16 hours of program, 2 days, end to end. We have our premises, food, lunch, everything over there. You have to only come with your brain, sit and do the code. Thank you so much.